Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to MN Viking Zombie YouTube and Twitch channel. My name is Kyle Smith, and we're going to be doing a movie review with the one and only Adam Carlson, our host. How are you, sir?
Not having the best day, but you know what? That's all right because I think it's going to be a good night.
We're going to make it a good night because we're going to do a movie review of the 2020, which you can catch this on Amazon Prime. I'm not sure if it came out in theaters or not. I don't remember seeing it.
It's
But
also on the Peacock.
oh, there you go. Watched a couple things on Peacock as well. Prepare for this lengthy title, which was really funny. We were just discussing that before we went live. My heart can't beat unless you tell it to. And Adam suggested this to me based on the amazing Rotten Tomatoes score that is out on this movie. I think, what, 98%?
Yeah, what I did this time was instead of scrolling through Netflix and seeing what was new or what was popular, I decided to type in best horror films of 2021.
Nice.
And what I got was a list of the Rotten Tomatoes movies. What is it called? Tomato Izer? I don't know, something stupid like that. But anyway, this had a 98% fresh rating, meaning that critics absolutely adored it. So for that reason, it was the number one rated horror movie on there. And I said, you know what? Let's give this a try. I knew nothing about it. Coming into it, neither of us knew anything.
Not a thing.
So we gave it a whirl. We both watched it. And now we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, let's dive right in. Patrick Fugit is Dwight, the main character here. One of the main characters. There's three main characters. A brother, Patrick Fugit as Dwight, Ingrid Schramm as Jesse, and then Owen Campbell as Thomas. These are all relatives. It's a younger brother, has some sort of illness to where blood from other people makes him feel good and keeps him alive.
We know what the illness was after the movie. The guy was a vampire.
Vampire blood. I'm spacing out now. I've had a very weird day, so I will apologize for that. I'm just now hearing again too, so this is a lot of fun for both of us now.
So yeah, he needed a steady flow of blood in order to stay alive. He had to stay in the room with all the walls completely covered, never go outside during the daytime. They didn't really let him out at nighttime either, just out of fear of, vampire. So, but they never used the word vampire. They just said that he was ill, right?
Yep, just he was sick or he was ill. And that's really funny because in this movie, you become attached until you find out at the very end of you feel compassion and empathy for this character. And that would be Owen playing Thomas. You can see that he's frail. It's a thinner character. It's a thinner male, and he's obviously sick. But there's a human element to this movie where you feel bad for him because he wants social interaction. He wants to be normal. He wants to feel normal things, and he gets a little glimpse of the outside world by chance, not by design, and he wants more of it. And obviously his brother and sister are trying to shield him from that, knowing what they know. And it pulls you in. It makes you become a fan and feel sympathy for him. And it's a really good angle that this story was written about.
Yeah, so his brother, he was making a lot of trips outside the house. He was finding transients and other unimportant people to bring to the house and kill and drain their blood so that he could eat. And then one time he gets in a little bit of a problem where he isn't able to bring someone home, and she decides that she's going to take it on her to go out and get him some blood. And that's where things start getting a little complicated here. I will say this movie had a rather slow start. I will make a minor exception because the very beginning of the movie hits you a little bit, and then there's the big lull.
Yeah, and I appreciated that, honestly. I would rather it be, a big hit than a lull to make me anticipate more, rather than a lull to build, just from scratch. And that's just me personally. But yeah, I definitely see that. I agree with that totally.
Yeah, they were taking that time to build the character. The male character was, he didn't really have a lot of relationships, but he did go see a prostitute on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And he was getting to know her. He was kind of falling for her and thinking that he would want to run away with her. And the sister caught him going to the hotel room with her, and she seemed like a rather jealous type.
You know what was really weird before we realized that Dwight and Jesse were brother and sister? I thought that they may be the parents of Thomas before that was made clear. And I was like, oh, this guy's cheating on his wife. This is terrible. And then I realized, oh, no, he's not only having sex with a prostitute, but it's beyond anything platonic and just fulfilling needs, whether they be terrible or, natural desires. He's paying her extra to have conversations with him because he's so lonely. And I felt horrible for the guy. I was like, you're having to pay what society deems as a lesser person, even though I don't necessarily agree with that with sex workers, is you're paying a lesser viewed person in society just to have a normal conversation with. Wow, the depths that must be to be
Having to
that
pay for
character.
companionship, that's got to be hard.
It was
Gotta
rough,
be
man.
super
That
hard.
really, really drove me to feel empathy and sympathy for this character. I was like, oh my
And he was
goodness.
daydreaming about running away to the
Mhm.
beaches with her, and
let's
it
be
was
clear.
just tough.
Let's be clear on that. Dwight here, Patrick, the main character, which, by the way, I have to say, my favorite movie of all time is Almost Famous. I saw this kid's face, and I was like, where the hell do I know this kid from? Because he didn't play a main character in that movie, but it was centered around him. But I remember more of Zooey Deschanel and the rock band in that movie, Stillwater. But the young man in that movie, I was like, man, it's so funny seeing him, maybe 20 years later. I was like, I knew that face, but I didn't feel any negativity towards Dwight. I felt, compassion and pulled in. I was like, what is he going through? Because that's the slow burn that Adam mentioned in this movie is, why do I feel so connected to this person? I want to know more as to why you're doing what you're doing. And I think
there were some
what's
huge
brilliant.
moments in this movie that had that.
Mm-hmm.
When he had to go to the back of the truck to get that tool to take out the
pivotal scene,
the immigrant that he had in his truck, he did not want to do it.
There's so much conviction in this movie of knowing what is right and wrong and what is morally correct. And it'll drive a stake in your heart if you invest in these characters. That's a good scene.
Yeah, that was a strong scene, and the fact that he was able to chase that guy down, but he didn't kill him, and he put him in the shed. And then when, of course, the sister goes out to get her blood for, it's their little brother, right? That's who it is?
Yes. Little brother's name is Thomas.
Yes. She absolutely targets the prostitute, because not only had she seen the prostitute outside her diner, but she saw the prostitute with her brother, and that, to me, was a bit vindictive, because it feels like she wanted to shut him out. She wanted him to be lonely and desperate and need them.
I was just going to bring that up. When she did the whole kind of stalking, whoever they stalk, they go after homeless people or individuals who may be drug addicts, prostitutes, whatever it is.
People that wouldn't be missed.
The lower parts of society that people aren't going to look for, unfortunately. She came after the one person that she was going to get directions from, but she shifted there and went after the prostitute. And you're like, oh, this is out of spite. This is absolutely out of spite. And seeing the shock on Patrick's face, Dwight, the character, it was wild because that recognition, they spent I think they spent 3 or 4 extra seconds when they didn't have to in this movie. And you saw the shock and awe. And I was like, oh no, I feel so bad for him. This is his one companion. And that she knew, that character in the back of her mind, that she had picked out the right person through his astonishment.
Yeah, that scene was a big one. And the relationship between the brother and the sister, you felt it was strong. You knew they had a strong bond.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that there was so much jealousy going on, and the fact that they couldn't agree on really what to do about their little brother at times, they did fight like an old married couple.
They did.
Through a lot of the movie, disagreeing on how to handle things. Thomas wanted to go outside at night or maybe go for a ride in the truck at night, and she shut that down immediately. And then as soon as she turned her back, he went outside with him.
So I think shifting to Thomas for just a second, I think there's an innocence that draws you into him because you see him in such a physically frail state.
He couldn't even sing karaoke.
Oh, it was so sad because you could tell it brought him happiness, but he wasn't strong enough to stand up and sing. And me being a musician, that hit me hard, you know. Um, seeing, I'm sorry, I'm going to keep going back and forth through these names, but seeing Dwight go back and sell some extra items. They were obviously not wealthy, selling some extra items to buy Thomas a
But you know
karaoke
what he was selling, right?
yes.
The clothes and the items that they found on the people they were killing.
Right. And that's the thing that I think that will drive people to this movie, to feel some sort of human element for what are essentially terrible people in this movie. They're
Now,
doing terrible
we
things.
mentioned that he was buying stuff for Thomas,
Mhm.
but what I thought was kind of interesting was that their idea of Christmas, because they were doing Christmas every month.
Yeah, just to keep Thomas, going, and I don't know, to bring some sort of joy there, because you have to bring that sort of element of joy and happiness to that house when there's so much negativity and death and just morbidity in that house, man.
And he couldn't leave.
You've got to bring some kind of outside element of happiness there, because they were living a miserable existence. They were doing what they needed to do to survive, and I think that's the main thing that you relate to in these characters. But nothing that they were doing was morally correct.
Yeah, so Thomas finally gets up the nerve he takes a paper airplane that Dwight made for him,
Mm-hmm.
and he sees a couple of kids outside during the day, and he takes his chance to open up the door, and he throws this paper airplane out there to get their attention and try to make a friend. And of course, in throwing it out there, his hand hit the sunlight and it burnt rather badly.
Yep.
But it succeeded because the kid did come back, and they did form a little bit of a friendship, even though the kid he knew that there was a lot off in that house, but he was so curious.
Came back later, a sub character of this entire plot, but one of the passerbys came by to check in as a nice gesture to say, "Hey, are you okay?" There was a lot of hesitation in the beginning. He invites him in. There's odd things about this character Thomas to the passerby, even in like, "Hey, sit down, play piano with me." Like, you have to raise your hands.
That like, game, they had no clue.
Yeah, just little quirks that their family had that a normal family probably doesn't do.
What year was this song written?
Oh,
what?
Just wild, And he said, the passerby says, "Hey, I've never been around anyone who's homeschooled. This is a new thing for me." So you feel the vulnerability there, but man, the tensions rose once Dwight got home. You were like, "Oh no, you're not going to kill this kid."
Even before then, Thomas, not knowing any different, he offered that kid a glass of blood.
I forgot about that. That's a good point.
That was so strange. He's like, "What is that?" And the kid, after a little bit of hesitation, he drank some.
Mm-hmm. I think the thing that drove me to the most tension for the movie, not only the immigrant that they ended up having to dispose of, which was very tense because there was such a human element of mercy that you wanted to see there, but the element of the passerby standing against the sink, and you see him reach behind himself to grab a knife, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, Dwight's already been stabbed in the leg by the immigrant at this point." So you're like, what's going to happen next? Is someone going to die here that doesn't? Dwight shows compassion when the sister comes home, which ultimately was the prostitute that we mentioned. And there's just so much to process there. So that, for me, I could see why for the high rating of this movie. Once you let the dust settle on this film and you realize the brilliance of the twists and the timing of everything, man, that threw me for a loop. I was like, this guy has to be feeling all kinds of emotion right now. He sees what would have been his would-be escapee lover, and then he's got to worry about a kid in the closet who eventually, as we know, pops out and stabs the sister and would be ultimately the killer of the sister.
Well, I didn't think that he would do that because the brother tried to stow him away in the pantry there,
right,
so that he could be safe while she came in. But I mean, how do you respond otherwise when you see someone wheel a dead body in?
That poor kid went through the ringer. And the craziest part of that to me was Dwight decided to take him out for a ride, and he's deciding on the way whether or not he wants to kill him. And he ultimately says no and lets him go, which shows a huge side of compassion there. You could tell from the ending too. We'll get to the ending in a little bit, but you
Well,
could tell
before you
from the
let him
ending.
go, too, he was asking him some questions like, "Is it just you and your dad? I know what it's like to feel alone." And
Mhm.
he's bonding with him,
He's
and
trying to find a connection with
yeah,
anyone through this whole film. So crazy.
it was really heartbreaking to see Dwight try to do anything he could do to have some sort of normal human interaction, because his whole life is taking care of his little brother.
Yeah, and to the point where we've echoed a couple times in this show is you appreciate the connection to family. You'll do anything for your family, but it's really taking a toll on the main character Dwight, who is just at a moral crossroads. I can't keep killing people, these innocent people, even though they may not be missed by society, whether they're homeless or they're prostitutes, whatever we've mentioned before. It's taken a toll on him mentally, and his want to do this is run out. And I think you really see that at the end with the passerby, the young kid that he ends up letting go. He says, "Hey, just get out, just go." He's tired of killing, which, I felt a connection there. But you also later on, right after that, you feel the grievance that he has when he sees his sister in the bathtub. The passerby ended up stabbing him and running away, or her stabbing her and running away. You feel the grievance that he's going through. He's like, I didn't want you to die either, but
And
this is
instead
just
of
a
worrying about her
circumstance.
own life, she
Right.
tells him to chase him
Mhm.
down and kill him for the safety of their little brother. And they had the same goal. They just weren't on the same page as to how to get there.
Correct. The goal was to take care of their younger brother Thomas, but they definitely had different ways of doing it. And in the back of my mind, like, we do that on this channel a lot. We look for simple solutions in obvious situations in movies. I'm thinking, why can't we go to blood banks and purchase this off of people? But at some point there are going to be questions there. I think their household was definitely about anonymity and trying to be under the radar and not be caught because
Well,
they knew Thomas would be found.
the whole situation was strange because they never really addressed how he became a vampire, why he's a
Yes.
vampire.
Hmm.
If
I think.
vampirism is a normal thing in that society,
Mhm.
because we actually don't know any of that. I mean, there could be vampires everywhere, but they never really addressed that at all.
I think for me, and that's a great point, thought about this earlier in the episode, but this is a good roundabout segment to it, is even if it was something as simple as a Spider-Man explanation of, oh, he was bit by something. Oh, he was this, he was dropped here, or something happened here. Even if it was something weird like, oh, hey, this is an adoptee child from Russia and he had a nuclear experiment done on him, whatever it was. Um, we didn't have any explanation as to
No.
why Thomas is like that, because they're not like that.
Did you like that you weren't hand fed a reason and that you kind of had to try to piece a little bit of it together? Or would you rather have a little bit of insight as to
You
why
know,
the little brother was the way he was?
I can see with the high rating that this film had, I can appreciate why there was nothing there. Me as a greedier fan, wanting to know, just even like I said, something small. Give me something, just give me a hint that makes me want to work towards something, please. But it does throw me off slightly because the siblings aren't. And it's like, okay, well, you're calling him as your brother. Is he really your brother?
Right.
How did this happen? Even if you don't tell me why or how he's a vampire, tell me how you found him. I would like that, but I'm okay with how it is. It makes you guess a little bit, makes you think.
So after the sister passes away in the tub and the kid that came to visit ran away and got loose, the older brother is left with Thomas, and he Dwight makes the decision. He said, I'm going away.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do this anymore. And I'm not coming back." So he gets in his truck, he goes to the beach, and he's sitting there at the beach looking around, and he can't do it. He can't leave his brother. He goes back, and his brother is laying in bed, frailer than ever.
Mm-hmm.
Hasn't been able to eat, hasn't done anything. And when he arrives, Thomas looks at him and says, "Open the window." After a long emotional time of trying to decide whether this was the right thing to do or not, Dwight finally opens the window and the light comes in. And they never show it, but we know that Thomas is gone.
Absolutely. And what a dramatic ending coming from Thomas saying, open the window, must have given Dwight a little bit of peace. Um, I feel that too. And I know this is super, super
He wanted to
morbid.
free his brother of those burdens and let him have a life that he didn't have himself, because he knew that they were working so hard to keep him alive, and that if he were to say, I'm done, that his brother could go have a normal life, as long as they never find the bodies in the backyard.
Yeah, really. All the shallow graves that are back there. What's sad, I know this is going to take a super dark turn, but it made me think of my own mother. The last couple of days my mother was alive, she gave me so much peace, and she said, hey, everything's going to be okay. Don't hold your life up. This is just part of the process. Everything's gonna be fine. I know where I'm going, blah blah blah. And I instantly connected with that. I was like, oh my gosh, what a nice gesture from someone who knows their end is coming. And to that point, what I've thought, I'm trying to be better on this channel and on our football podcast, letting the other guys speak, because I get so excited to jump in. I don't mean to interrupt these guys.
No, I love it.
I know I get really excited about it, but what I was thinking about earlier too, one of the pivotal scenes, the little things in movies that you just admire because you relate with characters for whatever they're going through. You know what I related with? He's laying in the bed, and I love the lighting. It's kind of like in here, but if it was dimmed. There's one lone light in there because he can't have a lot of light going on. Obviously, he's a vampire. He pulls out his little thing under his bed, and he puts on sunglasses because he wants to feel normal, like a normal kid. And I was like, that is a genius scene in this movie, Little things like that draw me in.
Yeah, I loved how when he was laying in bed and he could hear the kids walking by outside, and how excited you could see in his eyes that he was. And then he gets all sad knowing that he'll never be able to go out there and play with them.
He could only play at night if it was even possible, but who knows? That's the enigma of his character is, what if they did let him out, which the sister was very, very stern on. You are not going outside. You're not leaving. This is your life. What if he would have gotten the desire to hunt these kids? That's going to get out. God forbid he kill one of his own friends and have to deal with the weight of that on his shoulders. So,
which was interesting because he never seemed to want to attack that kid that came in the house.
He never seemed
like it even crossed his mind.
Right. He seemed appreciative to have a friend and to connect with someone from the outside world. And I think that's the basis of this movie, is finding a common ground, even though we would never hope that we were in that situation in any one of those spots. You find a common ground to relate with these characters because they just want to feel some sort of normalcy here. And I think that's the main point of the movie. And
yeah, it's all about connecting with people. Mm-hmm. We saw how much trouble Dwight had being able to connect with anyone. And as soon as they found someone, they were taken away. The sister, when she was being a waitress, boy, she did not connect with anybody, and she didn't want to. She didn't care to.
Zoned out every day at work. Worried about getting home and making
desperately to connect with anybody, and couldn't, because he couldn't leave the house, and because the only time that he could, that the sun was out or his sister was there, and they wouldn't allow it to happen. And honestly, this movie was so much less about vampires than it was about connecting with other human beings, and what kind of drastic things a human being will do to feel an emotional connection to anybody.
You know what I love though, because this movie was much more of a drama than a horror, but goodness, when it peaked, kind of like if you were looking at, like, if I speak into the microphone like this, it gets more intense, right? If you were watching a heart monitor, it would spike when the blood pressure and the heart rises. When these people killed in this movie, it was instantaneous and life was gone within a matter of seconds. So if you're looking for the gore and the reality of death, that's definitely going to serve you in this movie. Now you have to wait, and it's going to be sparingly throughout, but man, there were some real elements of surprise of death in this movie. And you're just sitting there I was kind of in shock. I was like, we're used to slashers or thrillers.
Yeah, this didn't have a lot of on-screen gore. Right. It really wasn't there. The deaths were all kind of subtle, aside from the sister, of course, with the bathtub of blood. But yeah, I mean, as far as a horror movie, for one that has a lot to do with blood and vampire and all that kind of stuff, it was more of a drama that really kind of, like we've done before, movies that have you learn about characters And this was, again, another character study movie about these three individuals that were
Absolutely.
bonded together, but couldn't be more different.
Yeah, all three of them are definitely cut from a different cloth, even though they, for the story, were related.
Now, let's take a moment to praise some stuff here, because the acting in this movie was phenomenal.
It was great, wonderful. Probably the best of any of the movies we've reviewed thus far to this date. Probably the top.
The visuals were, I thought they were quite good.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed every scene that I watched because everything seemed to be staged correctly. The way that the director had things ready to go was very appealing to me. And honestly, even the cinematography, the lighting in that
is
house,
so crucial in this movie. Oh my goodness. For having to
it
keep a
was
house filled
good.
with a vampire. And can I just say, with lighting and the effect of the mood, and even what you're saying there with the lighting and the mood of this movie, the mood of this movie is somber and just it's kind of dreadful.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful because that's exactly the feeling that they want you to feel, because there's not a lot of happiness in any angle of this movie, depending on what side you look at it from.
Yeah, there was a lot to like about this movie. And coming into it, I'll admit, when I saw 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, I said, this is going to be some sort of really pretentious, over-the-top movie that I don't think regular, normal people will be able to relate to. And I was wrong.
I was a little bit underwhelmed at the start, but once I took a melatonin last night to get some sleep, had a couple of weird dreams. There were little pieces of the movie that went in, but nothing crazy. And then once I let it sit today, I think this movie's brilliant. Honestly, man, I don't know what your rating is going to be, and we can kind of just segue straight into that. But this is the best movie we've reviewed so far, and it's not even a real horror. I classify it as a drama and a character study, but man, this is probably the best one as far as acting wise and how I felt afterwards. The writing in this movie was so brilliant. I've got my dog over here too, man. It's so funny. He's just begging for attention.
I'll admit, I don't. If I were to give this a grade out of 100, I probably wouldn't give it a 98. But
right, no,
I enjoyed it. I really thought that I was going to get something that no casual moviegoer would enjoy, because that's usually the case with critically reviewed just films that get reviews like that. And I walked away very impressed. Like you said, the horror aspect of this, for something with a vampire and killings and blood and stuff like that, it might not appeal to a lot of horror fans in that way.
Right.
If you're looking for a slasher or something with a ton of jump scares, this ain't it.
Yeah, if you're like, I've tried to get Adam. Maybe I'll talk him into it one day. There's something that came out in the 2010s. It's one of the exorcism movies. It's not really his favorite, but man, it was one of the best horror movies I've ever seen. He's like, I'm not into that. Whatever. This is something I believe, and I'm speaking for Adam now, but he can correct me if I'm wrong. I would recommend this movie to a lot of people. If you really want to sit down and absorb good writing, and then it's one thing if you can tell a script was really good, but the acting wasn't, maybe they just couldn't afford someone, or the maybe it was rushed or something like that. But everything about the writing and the acting in this movie, they married so well together. And I was like, this is a great movie. This is a wonderful
It's so weird
movie.
how everything after that first big scene, kind of at the time when you're watching it, it feels so insignificant. Then later on, when these characters are interacting, those mannerisms, those behaviors, the way they talk, the way they act, they all came into play.
Well, too, to speak on the first scene later, because we're talking about the initial kill that feeds the younger brother. They do their thing. You're thinking, okay, this is a way of life. You didn't know that it was just kind of going to go downhill from there. You think that's everyday life. And then you see the struggles of what it is with the burden that they must carry of, I've got to keep my younger brother alive who's a vampire, but it's going to get harder, and I love the realism of this movie, because there's no way you would get away with this for an entire lifetime. Something would go wrong, something would add up, and it slowly starts to compound in this movie. And I think that's the brilliance of this, is the realism. It draws you in, you feel the connection with characters, and then they put in mostly realistic stuff, even down to the part where the immigrant stabs him in the leg.
Yeah.
You're thinking, I thought in my head, I was like, oh my God, finally something real in a scary movie. He's not just going to camp. This guy's a bigger, heavier set guy. He's going to stab him. He's going to fight his way out of this. And I think,
And you
oh
can
my
tell how
gosh.
much that everything that was going on was mentally draining
Oh
these
yeah.
people. They'd been doing it for so long. And I mean, how can you kill and drain people of blood, dispose of bodies for over and over and over and not have that take a toll on your way of life? At some point, you're going to stop seeing people as people and just see them as blood bags.
Good Mad Max reference there. Yeah, absolutely. It's gonna take its toll. It's gonna have a price, and it's gonna be, are you willing to pay that over and over like the rent is due? And finally, it became too much. But this was an excellent film. My heart can't beat unless you tell it to. 2020. It's on Amazon Prime. The writer here is John Quartus, the director as well. Wonderful film. This is going to be the highest rating I've given out a movie on our channel yet. I'm giving it an 8.5. This is a must see from me. I think that you should put aside any expectations and just absorb the film kind of like a meal and just let it be what it is to you and realize like it's going to be slow at some points, but if you understand the situations they're trying to portray, I think they executed this phenomenally.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. And the mid 8s is somewhere I was going to go. And honestly, because of how they attacked so many different mental health angles and all that, I'm going to go 8.7.
Absolutely.
I wasn't expecting to enjoy this as much as I did.
Adam threw this to me. We had a movie we won't name because I honestly have forgotten it, but we had a movie that Adam watched. He's like, hey, this is not anything I want to talk about. You know, maybe later we'll both do it. Maybe not. Probably
really bad.
Like no. Yeah, probably not. But Adam's like, hey, check this out. Luckily, I stumbled upon, I forgot I have Amazon Prime, so we have another outlet to watch movies. But hey, man, this is a good recommendation by you. This is the best film we've reviewed on this channel yet. And I highly recommend anyone out there in the universe that watches this channel, please check this movie out for your own sake. It's going to be.
I had never heard of it before I Googled. I'd never heard of it.
This is a dry reaction for both of us, but cold reaction, whatever you want to call it. But
I didn't know anybody that was in it. I didn't know any of the plot. I didn't look at anything. I went in absolutely blind.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't have walked away more impressed. I don't know. This is going to probably set the bar for now on this channel.
I don't think anything's going to pass this for a while unless we just stumble upon something better.
Although we are going to try to, like I've said before, try to find some more slasher, more horror-based movies, because we have been taking a little bit of digressions down the thriller and drama side of things, but honestly, I don't mind that one bit, especially when we can watch movies that we end up really enjoying or can have some strong opinions about. Because yeah, this was a real pleasant surprise.
This movie had depth to it, and it's not something that takes you. It's not something you have to really sit and think on. It just makes you kind of ponder for just a second, and then when the appreciation sets in, you're like, oh, I get it. So hey, go check this movie out. We highly recommend it. This is a fun film to watch and just brilliant writing and acting.
And in case someone watched this whole thing and still hasn't seen the movie,
we have reviewed it the whole time.
Is a reference to the song that they were singing on the karaoke machine, and that would play sometimes in the movie. And it was, I actually don't know if that's a real song or not. I never looked. But it seemed to be important to them.
That's good. That's a nice little heartfelt moment of the film out of all the craziness that was going on.
Yeah, so I'm walking away from this movie happy.
Very satisfied. We've had some clunkers here or there, which is fine. Nothing on this film, nothing on this channel of Adam's channel has been total dog crap. Nothing yet. I'm sure we'll get there at some point.
We've had some that we've been a little moderately disappointed in,
right?
But nothing absolutely garbage yet.
Yeah, and nothing.
I think the last movie that we have watched could have fallen into that category. Like, for example, I know that we haven't named the movie, But if I were giving that a grade, it would probably be like about a 3.4.
Yep. Yeah,
So
there were
yeah,
some that were clunky and just failed expectations, but this one rose above that. And for the, like we said, we'll wrap this up, but for the channel that we like the old stuff. We like the Friday the 13th and
sure,
the Child's Plays and the Nightmare on Elm Street,
yeah,
all the classics, the Hellraisers. For something that doesn't fit in those categories and kind of, I know you haven't seen the new Scream, but they put into a reference of like, they throw a Jordan Peele out there. They throw his name out there and say, hey, look, this is advanced horror. This is stuff that makes you, this is fun.
oh
Right at the
boy,
very end. Love Face with the
oh boy, they're going wild.
with the squirty thumbs up and the hot face and the
Ooh,
kissy lips. Yeah, there we go. Send me some more stuff there. Oh, that's
gotta
funny.
love them YouTube bots.
But
well, at least they're falling into maybe Dwight will go and find some compassion with Love Face over there.
Hey, you know what, Love Face? If here girls will do what you say, you should follow MN Viking Zombie on YouTube. You should follow him on Twitch. You should follow him everywhere because he's a brilliant, brilliant guy. And this was a lot of fun. And I am so glad to be a part of these fun shows.
I hope someone does watch this movie and come back and watch this about how much they enjoyed it too, or tell us why it didn't meet their standards, or because I would love to have some more interaction on how you guys feel about these kind of reviews, because so far I've really enjoyed doing them and I hope to do another one. I don't know when, but hopefully soon. And yeah, so I'm gonna keep going with this. It's my plan anyway. And I hope Mr. Smith will be along for the ride.
I'll definitely be there when my dog wants to make an appearance because he needs attention. Bronx, say hi to everyone. Get your pets.
There you go. Well, thanks again for anyone that stopped in, anyone that watches later, anyone that gives us a like or share or thumbs up or even just smiles that someone did a review on a movie they've never heard of. So in the end, I mean, we're all just horror fans or movie fans in general. So thanks again to everyone and stay bloody.